As Pastor Greg said, I'm Steve Cox from Abiding Presence Lutheran Church, and I did graduate from Texas Lutheran barely in 1996. I was in the Omega Tau fraternity, which helped me to barely graduate, and I had a lot of fun in college. And among the memories that I have from college are being a part of campus ministry. But one in particular, I think it was my third or third year, that I had, I think the theme was breaking down the walls, and they had t-shirts with this brick wall on it, and some Lutherans trying to tear down this wall. And that year was a troubled year for me. I was having a lot of problems with extracurricular activities, as it were. And I was also an assistant, a worship assistant, or ministry assistant for campus ministry that Pastor Greg had asked me to do. And he came to me, and he looked at me and he said, "Steve, you got to change what you're doing, man. You need to change what's going on. I can't have you as a leader if you're going to continue doing this." And I got mad. I got very angry, and I left campus ministry altogether, and kind of just put my faith to the side. And what I didn't realize is that Pastor Greg was offering to, was saying, "Hey, go and jump into the dirty water of the Jordan River and wash yourself, man. Get a hold of what's really happening in your life." I want to turn our attention to what we just heard about Naaman. Now, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name. I'm pretty sure it's Naaman, but from South Texas, we just say Naaman. And so that's what we're going to go with today. We've heard about this guy before because we heard about him from Jesus when he goes back to his hometown to preach. And Jesus goes into the synagogue and he reads from the scroll and he starts to talk about it. And he says that there were a lot of lepers in the time of the prophet Elijah, but only one was healed. Naaman of Syria. Naaman the Gentile. Naaman the general. Naaman the mighty warrior. And these people got mad. They were angry at what Jesus was saying because they knew what had happened. That the king that Naaman belonged to had already laid siege on Israel. So much so that the famine that happened afterwards, people were cannibalizing their young. It was horrible. And so this is the thanks that they get for Naaman's healing. And now we go back and look at that lesson that Jesus is talking to them about, and we see that Naaman was a mighty warrior. He had everything. He probably had the latest chariots. He had servants to tend to every need. And if he was walking around today, he probably had an end to get the iPad 3. You know, he could get anything that he wanted, but he had this personal problem. He had leprosy. Now, leprosy in Syria was different from leprosy in Israel. You could still be in public if you had leprosy at that point in time. And he held a position of great honor, but he had this personal problem, and his money couldn't fix it. His power couldn't fix it. His position and authority couldn't fix it. But there's this captured slave girl, this Israelite, that comes to his aid. She was probably acquired when Naaman came through and wiped out a portion of Israel and took this girl in, and she became a slave to himself and to one of his wives. And she says, you know, if he'd just go and check in with this guy Elisha from Israel, he'd probably be cured of this leprosy. Could you imagine Naaman hearing this information? Being like, well, then I'd have everything. I'd have everything at my disposal. I'd have power, I'd have riches, I'd have wealth, and I'd have health. So Naaman begins his journey, and this arrogant, confident college student or general begins his journey, and he's making his way to talk to Elisha and say, you know, hey, here's some money. Do me a favor, pray, do whatever you need to do, put a cross over me or whatever, and let's be done with it. It's Old Testament. He wouldn't put a cross over him. So Naaman goes and he's on his way, and he's bringing with him what, you know, we could imagine today to be like $1 million, you know, to walk up and say, here's $1 million, do me a favor, heal me. I got to get back to what I'm doing. And so Naaman comes to the town, and Elisha sends a messenger. He doesn't even come in person. It's great. He sends this messenger to him and says, says, okay, so here's what you need to do. You need to jump into this river right here, the Jordan River. It's disgusting. It's dirty. It's muddy. It's murky. Jump in there, wash 7 times, and you'll be good. Naaman is angry. Are you kidding me? I came all this way, and you want me to jump into that river? We got some really nice rivers where I come from. They're gorgeous, sparkling clean water. I don't have to worry about getting dirty. In fact, I take baths in them sometimes, but you're asking me to jump in here, and I'm bringing you a big, huge gift. I'm bringing you all this money, and you're sending a servant? Are you kidding me? I'm not going to wash in that. And so Naaman turns around to walk away, and then there's this servant, right? There's this other servant. It's amazing. All these servants are helping out Naaman in a sense, and he comes up. I can just imagine him saying, excuse me, sir, pardon me, I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt you, Your Highness, but, it's not like he's saying, go climb up this mountain 2 or 3 times saying a prayer, or hop on one leg all the way back to Damascus and say a prayer. He's just saying, go and wash in this river. And so Naaman humbles himself and enters into that muddy water. And couldn't you just imagine the boils on his arms just fading away and the sores on his lips disappearing? And Naaman, while physically healed, receives something more amazing. That he realizes that all this stuff isn't really about him. All this power and wealth, he's been placing it all in himself, and it's not about that. It's about God, that God has done something amazing in his life. And he humbled himself and found himself in the bottom of a dirty river, making himself clean. I love this story because I've found myself in the most amazing places in my life before I ever became a pastor, and even after becoming a pastor, where I have just felt like I need to dive in to the muddy waters. I need to put aside my selfishness, put aside my greed, put aside those things that I think are that belong to me, and I need to just dive in and listen to the voices of others that say, hey, this might not be what you're supposed to be doing right now. Have you thought about jumping in over here? I know it sounds crazy. I know it looks impossible. But something special is happening right here. And this is where God is calling you to be. As a college student, and I've been there, and I'm still there. As a college student, you're constantly made aware of all kinds of wonderful temptations in life. And some of them are a lot of fun. And so we're constantly aware of these things that are in our lives. But there's also a voice, a presence, something reminding us that every once in a while we have to drop those things that we desire and think about what it is that God is desiring for us. Elisha didn't want the money. Elisha wanted this man's faith in God. Pastor Greg didn't want me because I was a talented bass player. He wanted me because he knew God was calling me for something greater. And he was right. And I didn't listen. And years later, I found myself in a pit, and I had to figure out how to get out. And all it took was just diving in and allowing God to lead, and God to open up, and God to usher me to the next stage in life. And it took a long time to get there. So if anything we can learn from today's lesson, is something my father used to tell me all the time. He said, Steve, son, you really tick me off a lot. That's not the lesson, but he says, you really tick me off a lot. There's going to be times in life, son, where you're going to miss the exit 2 or 3 times. But if you're traveling with God, you're going to get there.